this is Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of the Contrarian. Thrilled to have back Anderson Clayton, who is the chairman of the Democratic Party for the great state of North Carolina. Welcome, Anderson.
Thanks for having us, Jen. We always appreciate it.
My pleasure. So we have this big, ugly bill making its way through the Senate now. Talk to us a little bit about how things like the Medicaid cuts, the SNAP cuts would affect people in North Carolina.
I mean, we have over 2.9 million people across North Carolina right now that rely on SNAP benefits each and every day to make sure that their families are fed and allowed to be able to continue their livelihoods and make sure that communities across North Carolina have access to those life-saving services. 1.3 million people are children that are on SNAP benefits out of the 2.9 million that Tom Tillis is trying to gut funding from. And we've got to remember that a lot of these communities are in rural North Carolina right now. North Carolina Democrats have made a really interesting overlay of maps across the state. So you can go into any county and see how your county will be impacted by SNAP cuts to the state. And so you can go to ncdp.org/SNAP to figure out how your community could be threatened by these big budget cuts. But ultimately, what we're seeing is that, Republicans in Washington, D.C. are choosing billionaire tax cuts over actually feeding people across North Carolina and making sure that they've got access to life-saving care. And SNAP cuts are just one of the things, right? You just mentioned two Medicaid cuts and Medicare cuts too that are life-saving for many, many people across North Carolina, particular rural North Carolina. We were doing a rural North Carolina tour right now across Eastern North Carolina, which would have the most impact, honestly, from Medicaid cuts throughout the entire state, which is in Congressman Don Davis's district in CD1. It's often called the Black Belt region of North Carolina because it has so many of our majority minority rural counties in them. And so looking at how much devastation would come into effect when you already have healthcare deserts across Eastern North Carolina, to take away and to defund those healthcare services even more would just be a travesty, both economically, but also for people's lifestyles and financial responsibility out there.
What has Tom Tillis been saying when he's asked about these sorts of cuts? What is he telling constituents? What's he telling the local media?
Well, he's not telling him anything because he's not showing up in North Carolina to answer to folks that are, understandably or afraid about what's going to happen. We were in Martin County last night, and Martin County had just recently lost their hospital right in the last decade from Medicaid not being expanded in North Carolina. And North Carolina was one of the last states to actually expand Medicaid access at the federal level and making sure that we gave access to over 600,000 North Carolinians just last year for Medicaid expansion who had never had access to healthcare before, and making sure that those folks were able to maintain it. But we were in Martin County and they were talking about the closure of their hospital from lack of Medicaid expansion in North Carolina. And there was a man there who said, my daughter is on Medicaid services right now. He said, I have written Tom Tillis, I've called their offices, and every time they tell him that these cuts are not going to directly impact his daughter. And to me right now, I feel like the offices of our congressional representatives are lying to people right now. And folks are going to feel that effect, especially if this budget continues to go through.
The other thing that has been talked about are FEMA cuts, or really kind of the destruction of FEMA altogether. The Trump people keep saying that they want to dismantle FEMA, maybe create something smaller, and put all the responsibility back on the states. Now, I do remember he got quite upset when he thought North Carolinians were not getting enough support during the hurricane season last year. What are North Carolinians saying about that? Do they want FEMA to go away?
Coming from the man who in his first term also denied FEMA relief to Eastern North Carolina after we had horrific hurricane damage as well out there, and Governor Cooper had been requesting federal funding and relief for that. Coming from the person who had denied it as well because we were quote unquote a Democratic state and it was coming from a Democratic governor. I have never seen a president weaponize federal funding and resources to disaster recovery like we've seen this president do and be willing to. And right now it's hurting people in Western North Carolina more than ever, because Josh Stein, our Democratic governor, has appealed 3 different times to Donald Trump to expand FEMA relief for small business owners, for people out there who still do not have houses. And they're going through the aspect of trying to fight with their insurance companies on whether or not any of the damages that they went through are going to be included. And it is up to the federal government to step in where states cannot right now. And our Republican in our state legislature are also refusing to send money to help hurricane relief in Western North Carolina. And I just think that when you're looking at how do you deal with the sort of conundrum that you're going to find at the state legislative level, where the federal government is saying it's your responsibility to come in here, and the state legislature also will not be able to help in that aspect. And you're looking at state budgets that are already going through constriction right now with how do they help with the cuts that they're experiencing from Medicaid and Medicare and healthcare cuts that this administration would like to enact, and also now looking at our government services like FEMA relief. And it won't happen, and it will not be fair to people across this state that need it. We're a state that's got the mountains on one side and the beach on the other. And if you don't expect that there's going to be more, unfortunately, natural disasters with climate change as it is, you're just dead wrong.
And of course, what you're speaking about is all damage that's been done in the past. We're now moving into the next hurricane season. And should something happen either to those communities or others, this would be on top of all the damage that hasn't been necessarily addressed, fully paid for from the last year. So there is seems like a compounding effect as time goes on. What about your congressmen? Any of them seem, on the Republican side, seem more inclined to talk to their constituents or show up in their districts or hear concerns about Medicaid, SNAP, and other kinds of cuts?
No, it was actually our congressman in NC09 that told every other Republican congressman to stop coming up. Richard Hudson had said, no one needs to do these town halls anymore because it's going to be bad for us having to go and show up in public and talk to constituents about what we're doing, because they know that it's not just Democrats that are angry right now about what's happening. It's unaffiliateds and Republicans who did not expect these cuts to drastically impact their lives as well. And that's what we're experiencing all over this state. I was just in Greg Murphy's district last night, where we have got some great folks that are going to be running for CD3 against him this year. It was actually one of the congressional races, unfortunately, that North Carolina Democrats did not have somebody willing to run for in 2024 because, it's a gerrymandered seat. A lot of folks would have rather not gone in knowing they were going to lose an election. And Greg Murphy has really inspired, I think, a lot of people to step up and say, we want to hold a Republican accountable for what they're doing right now. But also Greg Murphy's not shown up in his own district. He did a telephone town hall the other night that apparently he also did not show up for. And our constituents are paying attention. I had a lot of unaffiliateds out there in Onslow County with me last night saying, I came to hear you out and hear what your party had to say. And so I think that the idea of us showing up everywhere and continuing to do so and making sure we're inviting people that are not just a part of our own party is the way that we're going to continue to do this and go forward.
Keep Democrats, independents, disaffected Republicans engaged. They're very upset now, but the next election, at least the federal level, is not for a year and a half. You're very active in terms of party building and connection. What are you doing to kind of keep people in the fold? And what did you also see on No King's Day? Did that encourage you that there are more people, that the base is expanding and people are getting engaged?
I do. I think that honestly, the No Kings rallies have helped us be able to find folks that we're not party active before, right? But it's our job as the party to be everywhere and go where people are. And so a very big thank you to the grassroots organizations, Indivisible, all of the folks that across the state went and put those on in North Carolina. We had over 40,000 people show up across the state, taking action in different rallies across it. And I got to be in both rural North Carolina and Chatham County on Saturday. And I also got to be in Wake County on Saturday. And so urban and rural, and being able to see that there were 1,200 folks out in Chatham County with us and twice that as many, and almost 4,000 out in Raleigh with us that afternoon. And it's just inspiring, I think, to see folks stand up and say that we're going to fight back against what this administration has for us. And that means we're going to continue to gather. We're going to continue to educate. I'm going to talk to my friends. I'm going to make myself uncomfortable this year and bring politics to people in a way that we haven't before. And North Carolina Democrats are doing that right now by showing up at festivals across the state. June has been Pride Month for us and is Pride Month. And so we are in 30 counties right now, thanks to our LGBTQ caucus, who's been really active of making sure the party's got a presence everywhere. And also looking at Juneteenth events that we've had across the state this week that we could be active in and showing a presence for the party too, because it is about consistently showing up, not just 3 months before an election, but how are we in communities year round, month after month, organizing. And then also the other side of that is boots on the ground, because I'm a firm believer right now that people are not paying attention to the news, unfortunately. They are getting their news from the people in their lives and the folks around them. And so we're doing Tom Tillis accountability canvases and holding Tom Tillis accountable in all of our counties. You can go to ncdp.org/knock if you want to get involved with any of the canvases that are near you, or if you're in a county that wants to host one yourself, and help people understand that Tom Tillis is the reason why we have Pete Hegseth, RFK Jr., and Tulsi Gabbard in office right now. We've seen what it's like when Tom Tillis stands up on his word, and we know that he can do it again with the big bad bill that's headed through DC right now. And it's up to us to be able to hold him accountable to our community members to let them know what's going on.
Well, we've been arguing here at the Contrarian that the two things Democrats need to do are, first of all, make the victims of Trump's awful policies real. It's not just some statistic. It's not just an illegal immigrant who's not, frankly, eligible for any of these benefits anyway. It's not somebody else. It's people in their community. And the second is to tie that responsibility to Tom Tillis. So it sounds like you're doing both halves of it. I think I ask you, what do you think Republicans expect? Are they counting on Democrats not to turn out in 2026? Do they think they're dumb? Do they think, oh, well, the economy will be better and this will all kind of wash out? What is the mindset when what they're doing is so obviously unpopular? Whether you look at national polls, whether you look at what's going on in the states, these things are not popular with Republicans.
I mean, they're lying to their voters about it. They're actively telling people, and it's not just them. Americans for Prosperity, that's led by the Koch brothers, right, has got ads up on every major news channel or station throughout North Carolina right now, advertising that the big bad bill is going to give tax cuts to small business owners, and just honestly falsifying the information that they're putting out there. And it's our jobs to tell people right now that's not true. Actually, here's someone in your community that's going to lose their health insurance if this passes. Here's someone in your life that's going to lose access to health insurance if this happens, and here's what that's going to do to them. And I feel like that the storytelling component that we've really got to be able to push into, because they are right now priming voters. I see it every day on the news. I get emails about it from folks across the state that are concerned. And Democrats, just to tell people something that I'm sure they already know, right? Democrats don't have the dark money machine that Republicans do right now on the IE side of things. So the independent expenditure, the super PAC side of things. And what we're seeing is that they're outspending Democrats 8-1 right now nationally about this bill. And I think that we have got to get serious about talking to community members, to your family and your friends, that uncle of yours that really you don't get along with about politics, and just putting it out there to them, because what they're going to listen to is you right now, more so than the national news and anything else that they're seeing online, because disinformation is heavy and people know that. People are smart enough to understand that not everything they're reading is factual, but when you hear it enough and you're in that echo chamber enough, it is what infiltrates your mind, and it's what you start to believe.
Absolutely. Well, Anderson, there's a reason why you're head of the Democratic Party in North Carolina. Your enthusiasm, your ability to articulate the issues is really very impressive. We love having you on. Good luck in taking the fight to Tom Tillis and the rest of the Republican contingent. And we'll look forward to speaking with you again soon, I'm sure. Take care.
Oh, thank you.